watching West Dakota Fox News at 9 with Anna Schleisman and meteorologist Henry Blakes. Your first news of the night starts right now on West Dakota Fox News at 9.
He had a bomb in a backpack.
Bismarck police say a man made this bomb threat as he tried to rob Staryan Bank at the corner of 4th and Rosser this morning, prompting them to close off streets and implement a shelter in place for neighborhood businesses.
A perimeter was set up around the bank, and eventually at about 10:14, an individual did come out of the bank, and he's now in custody.
Records show 54-year-old Rondell Heisch has been jailed for robbery and terrorizing. Well, the war on drugs in North Dakota is escalating, as is the amount of firearm seizures. Law enforcement agencies are dealing with dozens of traffickers armed with an array of modified weapons. But where are they coming from? Drug dealers from metropolitan areas like Detroit, Chicago, and Minneapolis are traveling to North Dakota because there's high drug demand and low supply, meaning they can sell their products here for a lot more. The Metro Area Narcotics Task Force gave our investigative reporter, Daniela Hurtado, access to their facility to talk about how the drugs are connected to the hundreds of guns being seized. The agents' identities have been masked for their safety.
Don't even make me talk about my honey spot. Hey, 100 for a blue, that's my honey spot. If you even think about it, that's gonna get you shot.
This is Theodore Gray, a Detroit drug dealer wrapping his connections to North Dakota.
Bragging about his sales and where he's at and how dangerous of a person he is.
Gray was arrested by state agents for possession of a controlled substance and intent to distribute last year.
He bonded out.
A few days later, Gray was fatally shot in Detroit after a standoff with police. Let's go back. During the rap video, when Gray mentioned his honey spot, Metro Area Drug Task Force agents define the term as an area where you can make a lot more money.
He can get a lot more profit for what he's selling, and he's a little less known by law enforcement in this area.
Agents say the honey spot is right here in our backyard.
Bismarck in western North Dakota, along with the Fort Berthold Reservation.
Reports say Gray had a 5.7 handgun during the Detroit incident.
This cartridge will penetrate all the soft body armors out there.
Similar models and retrofitted firearms sit inside the evidence lockers of the Drug Task Force.
They'll trade the guns for the drugs.
Guns stolen within our community from your cars and homes.
They're just finding a new way to do it. You know, if I can go out and steal a gun and I can get $500 or $600 worth of drugs or $1,000 worth of drugs, I didn't have to come up with that money.
Many have caught on to that. By the numbers, Mantef statistics show their gun seizures have increased. 47 in 2014, 26 in 2015, 40 in 2016, 94 in 2017, and 62 in 2018. So we broke it down even further. In November, we got statistics from Bismarck Police, Mandan Police, Burleigh County Sheriff's Department, and Morton County Sheriff's Office. Bismarck has seized the most since 2014 at 200 firearms. Mandan PD seized 52 in the same time frame, Burleigh 30, and Morton 28. And with more guns on the streets, the Drug Task Force has had to use a lot more of this tape.
You know, they're trying to set them up like our police rifles. You know, they got scopes, they got red dot sights, they got lights, stuff like that, so they can go out into the dark and actually see what they're doing.
Weapons, the agent says drug dealers and crime offenders are gravitating towards, and crimes are mainly linked back to drugs.
It comes across the border and it hits all these hub cities and kind of starts to disperse. Well, when you come all the way up here, we're the end of that line. And so we pay the most.
With more demand and less providers,
different street gangs will have different territories in North Dakota that they control.
Big drug dealers from out of state are paying a visit to our neighborhoods.
They come out here to exploit those people to say, okay, you know, you got to continue to do theft and all this stuff so I can keep feeding you these pills and I can take the money back.
Guns are just a part of the game, but a deadly one the Drug Task Force is dealing with much more frequently.
Mantef agents say it's important to keep track of the make, model, and serial numbers of your weapons and keep them locked in safes. As for Gray, the man who was killed during a standoff, his case in North Dakota now gets dismissed because there's no longer a suspect. Federal documents show Gray's family in Michigan is suing Detroit law enforcement for wrongful death. Well, I hope people enjoyed the sunshine today, Henry. It doesn't look like it's sticking around.
Yeah, we'll get a little bit of sunshine tomorrow, but for the time being, the shower activity that was across the southwest and northeastern Montana has quickly dissipated. Still a few isolated sprinkles, clouds across the south, but for the most part, we are remaining rather dry. Our temperatures are still at 61 in Bismarck. Notice elsewhere, we are in the 50s, already down to 49 in Henninger with that northwest wind letting up. So right now, 5 to 15 mile per hour sustained northwesterly wind. That's the good news. The bad news as we continue into your Thursday morning through early Thursday evening, fire danger concerns become a problem for eastern Montana and all of the Peace Garden State. A cold front is going to bring us some strong blustery wind. In addition, we're going to be talking about the fire danger concerns due to that and the low humidity. So this fire weather watch goes into effect your Thursday morning and continues through your Thursday evening. I'll have your complete forecast and more coming up later during the news.
Well, the Williston Basin doesn't have a gauge telling us how much recoverable oil is in the ground, but there's a new assessment in the works that the industry hopes will show an increase in the detectable supply. The study looks at how much oil companies could get out of the ground, which could drastically change oil field investment. Technological advancements since the last assessment in 2013 lead some to believe we will see an increase.
Let's work together, let's make sure we get it right, let's make sure it's well done, let's make sure we use the current technology, and let's make sure we evaluate the full resource.
The last survey estimated that 7.4 billion barrels of oil were in the Bakken and Three Forks formations. Earlier this week, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced that as of May, the U.S. will impose sanctions on countries that continue importing oil from Iran. The Iranian foreign minister said today that Iran will continue to find buyers and sell its oil, and threatened the U.S. if it tries to block their efforts in the Strait of Hormuz.
The United States should know that when they enter the Strait of Hormuz, they have to talk to those who are protecting the Strait of Hormuz. And that is Iranian Revolutionary Guards.
The U.S. Navy said, quote, threats to close the strait impact the international community and undermine the free flow of commerce, which they stand ready to protect. Well, Heartland investors in Bismarck say removing waivers on Iranian sanctions will protect the price of oil. Eugene Grauner, an analyst with Heartland, says that though this takes Iranian oil off the market, OPEC is prepared to make up the difference.
OPEC, which cut oil production back on January 1st, they were going to re-up that here in June. And the talk and chatter has been that they are going to increase their production. So it's kind of one hand washing the other.
Grainer predicted that without this move, we would have seen oil prices fall when OPEC increased production. Well, as climate change and air pollution are top of mind, the American Lung Association says 40% of Americans live in counties with unhealthy air quality, an increase of over 7 million from last year. North Dakota counties in particular received poor grades for particle pollution. Burleigh, Williams, Dunn, Mercer, and Burke counties received an F, while Billings, McKenzie, and Oliver counties received a D. Ozone pollution grades were all A and B. The state plans to use an $8 million settlement from Volkswagen to reduce air pollution with cleaner vehicles. Well, Governor Burgum signed a bill today that exempts from oil extraction taxes the incremental oil produced by injecting coal-generated carbon dioxide into the ground. Burgum says our coal industry is a leader in environmental stewardship and capturing CO2 emissions. And a bill aimed to use half of the earnings from the state's voter-approved oil tax savings account to reduce individual and corporate income taxes was rejected. Sponsor Representative Craig Hedlund argued that it would spur the economy and make North Dakota more competitive with other states that don't have income tax. A conference committee stripped the proposal from the tax department's budget today. But legislators have approved an income tax deduction on Social Security benefits. The bill eliminates state taxes up to $50,000 for single filers and $100,000 for married couples filing jointly, which will cost the state treasury $7.3 million in the next biennium. AARP State Director Josh Asfig says the tax break will affect about 30,000 North Dakotans. It now goes to the governor. And a major win for Governor Burgum. The legislature has finally approved funding for the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library today. It's been hotly contested in both chambers, but they passed the bill to cover $50 million for operating expenses. Private donors will fund the construction. It's now on the governor's desk. And a bill to give tribes more money for health care costs is heading to the governor's desk. If tribes enter what's called care coordination agreements with medical providers, the state saves about $7.4 million, which will be split 60-40 in the tribe's favor. But this is still lower than what they initially wanted. This difference could affect whether tribes decide to buy in.
If the tribes ain't gonna be involved, then how can it be a win if they're not involved? And so it's kind of unknown yet whether it's a win or not. But to have something pass is better than not passing it, nothing at all.
And being cited for having less than half an ounce of marijuana on you could soon be just a fine. Lawmakers in conference committee agreed to lower the penalties on small amounts of marijuana possession to an infraction.
Our sentencing should be, and our criminal justice system should concentrate on other more serious offenses, and that the sentence for anyone for a small amount of possession or use is not going to face the heavy hand of the law.
Decriminalization supporters say the amended bill doesn't go far enough. Well, controversy after the Mueller report's release continues in Washington, D.C. President Trump says the subpoena is ridiculous, and he doesn't want White House staff testifying to congressional panels. And if impeachment is really brought to the table, well, he'll take it to the Supreme Court. He says he committed no crimes, but crooked Hillary, the Dems, the DNC, and dirty cops were caught in the act. And taking it to Congress is their last hope. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi maintains they're not to the point of impeachment yet. Well, in the meantime, the leaders of two of America's largest nuclear threats, Russia and North Korea, will meet for the first time ever. Their main topic is expected to be the nuclear issue. And after negotiations fell apart with Kim Jong-un and President Trump earlier this year, Kim wants to send the message that he has powerful allies. Last month, the construction site exploded. Now we know the culprit, and it's not a human.
And it looks like Minot's got some nice weather for now, but we will be seeing changes as we get closer to the weekend. Stick with us. We'll be back with more of West Dakota Fox after this.
The Minot Fire Marshal says the explosions last month at the construction site of the new Trinity Hospital were caused by propane tanks breaking loose from the copper pipes they were connected to. He says as the ground began to thaw, the tanks started shifting, and a pilot light then ignited the leaking fuel. Trinity Health says it's eager to move forward with construction, but there's no telling how long that will take. Affordable internet access is essential for farmers, small businesses, and rural Americans, which U.S. legislators have been pushing for. Senators Kevin Cramer and John Hoeven introduced the Rural Broadband Act in February. And now Virginia Representative Denver Riggleman wrote to the FCC as he thinks it's not accurately measuring how many people lack high-speed internet.
We don't need the federal government doing bad data collection and making decisions on bad data, which seems like they want to do that all the time.
Riggleman is pushing for more partnerships between the government and the private sector to accelerate broadband options that enhance educational and economic opportunities. North Dakota legislators approved an amended bill requiring local governments to prove a need to impose longer setbacks than the state's 1.5-mile buffer for livestock feeding operations. The original version forbid the imposition entirely. Opponents worried it takes away local control, but backers said it would help the state's livestock industry and the crop producers who sell them feed. It now goes to the governor. And Governor Doug Burgum has temporarily loosened driving restrictions for truckers who haul anhydrous ammonia fertilizer. This will help truckers haul more fertilizer in shorter periods of time, which North Dakota farmers need, as cold, wet conditions have delayed spring planting and increased fertilizer demand. This remains in effect through May. And as farmers gear up to plant, the soil moisture is in good supply. Topsoil moisture statewide is rated 91%, adequate to surplus, and subsoil moisture is 80% in those categories. Farmers are expected to get into the field on Monday. But ranchers are seeing drought conditions, which causes complications. If there isn't enough grass in the pasture, there's less forage, which cows need to produce milk for their calves. And there's less grass for calves once they wean off their mother's milk. It can also be a burden when getting ready for next winter.
In turn, doesn't produce as much winter feed, so we have to think beyond that to try and figure out how to have enough feed for them through the winter season.
Mattis said the good thing about ranching in North Dakota is that his cattle can feed on the past year's corn stalks and grain stubbles if they're low on grass. Well, good thing some moisture is on the way then, huh, Henry?
Yeah, we've got some moisture in the forecast over the next few days. For the time being, we are mostly dry. The weekend is another story. But before we get to that, I'd like to reach out to our viewers in Washburn because there will be a free Skywarn training held tomorrow, which is Thursday, April 25th at the fire department. That address is 907 Main Avenue. So if you live in Washburn or surrounding areas, free Skywarn training will be available for you to learn how to submit weather reports, whether severe spring or severe winter weather. The National Weather Service will be there to answer your questions. On top of that, another thing to talk about and to ask questions about are the fire danger conditions. Fire weather watch for all of North Dakota and eastern Montana Thursday morning through early Thursday evening as a cold front pushes through. Behind it, we're going to have strong northwesterly winds and low humidity, so these will likely be upgraded to fire weather or red flag warnings before you know it. As far as moisture is concerned, very limited moisture for the time being. The showers we had across the west and southwest earlier gradually dissipated because we're losing that daytime heating. The cold front pushes through tonight for northwestern North Dakota and northeastern Montana. Potentially a few showers overnight from that. Very hit and miss as it moves into the Minot area, possibly around sunrises in between 7 and 8 o'clock. That pushes out of here quickly. High pressure moves in. The wind picks up and is going to be relatively dry after that. So that's where the fire concerns come into play region-wide. But high pressure does hold its course and impacts our weather over the next several days. So for Friday, we get more of a southerly wind. Next week, low disturbance moves into the northwest, giving you a chance of showers, mainly dry conditions elsewhere with increasing cloud cover. Throughout the lower 48, we've got showers and storms from Texas extending into the Ohio River Valley, South Dakota getting in on some showers, not in our viewing area, but still notice things have tapered off drastically over the past several hours. So expect mainly dry conditions for tonight. Highs today, low to mid 70s across the central and eastern region. 75 in Bismarck, 69 for Williston. Now you're down to 50 degrees for Williston Garrison, 61 in Bismarck. So temperatures continue to cool down. The northwest wind continues to decrease, and that means less breezy conditions for tonight. However, the wind is going to pick up behind that front again tomorrow. Northwest wind, expect that anywhere between 15 to 25 miles per hour with even higher gusts. Temperature-wise for tomorrow, we are going to be a few degrees cooler than we were today, but not by much. So for Thursday, 60s for your highs, and notice temperatures start to drop after that. Even as we get into the weekend, we're talking about chances of precipitation in the form of rain and snow. Thankfully, accumulation not really expected, but it will be a bit on the chilly side next week.
Thanks, Henry. Well, these sweet baby boys aren't riding bikes yet, but helmets are making a difference in their lives. Their story next. Well, it's scary for parents when their child has an abnormality. Jordan Verdadero spoke with a doctor who's putting a family's mind at ease by helping their twin boys with a cranial deformity.
Squeak, squeak, squeak. Do you want that one?
This is Boston and Buxley, and these twins are in cranial remolding helmets. Their father, Cale Paulson, says they were born 2 months early.
They spent their first 5 weeks in the NICU here in Bismarck, and so then through time at home, sleeping on their back, they slowly kind of developed a flatness on the back of their head.
It's also known as helmet therapy. It's given to children who suffer from flattening on the occipital sides of their heads.
You're alarmed, and of course as a parent you always want to make sure you're doing the right thing.
Paulson says at first he didn't know if it was necessary, but found it's been painless and protective.
And once we get them into the helmet, then as their head is growing at such a rapid rate, it corrects inside the helmet.
Todd Jasper, orthotist, says if children aren't put in a helmet, it could potentially worsen the shape of their head or lead to other conditions down the road.
80% of their cranial growth happens by 1 year, so we like to get them into a helmet between 4.5 and 6 months.
By using a laser scanning device, Jasper is able to see 3D data that can be reviewed in multiple planes.
Well, most parents come back in 1 week, are pretty excited and say, this isn't near as bad as I thought, and I can see a correction already.
Paulson says this has assured him and his wife they are doing the right thing to make sure their boys have a perfect beginning. In Bismarck, I'm Jordan Verdadero reporting for your news leader.
Well, Saturday is the DEA's National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day to help combat abuse and overdoses. Of the 6,000 locations nationwide, 3 are in North Dakota. Anyone can drop off expired, unused, and unwanted prescription medications to the Turtle Mountain, Standing Rock, and Fort Totten agencies. The DEA cannot accept liquids, needles, or other sharp objects. This free and anonymous service runs from 10 to 2 on April 27th. And President Trump spoke at the Prescription Drug Abuse and Heroin Summit in Atlanta today, touting the bipartisan criminal justice reform bill.
Among other critical changes, the First Step Act provides addiction treatment to Americans in prison. And I'm pleased to report that in just 4 months, more than 16,000 inmates are participating in new drug treatment.
President Trump says they can't fix the epidemic overnight, but they're deploying every resource. And he says the best drug detection system is canines. Well, up next, this company will give you everything but the sun and sand. A company in Nebraska will superimpose pictures of you on backdrops of Hawaii, the Grand Canyon, and other popular places to post on social media. We'll talk about faking it till you make it here, Henry.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the real thing is actually better, but yeah, I think so too. Exactly. Next thing, we're talking about fire danger tomorrow, breezy as a front pushes through, and then the chance of rain-snow mix. Unfortunately, Anna, over the weekend.
All right. Well, I guess we need the moisture, so
we
we'll
really
live with it.
do.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much. Have a good night.